Happy Thursday. Wow, what a week. What a week. I think it's probably good to start off with the unfolding situation in the Middle East. Appalling stuff. On a personal note, I remember our dear footballers, our ball chasers, kneeling to Black Lives Matter, the American chapter of which, Black Lives Matter Chicago, just released an image of a paragliding Hamas terrorist about to land in a field full of people dancing, innocent people dancing at a music festival in Israel before massacring, raping and dismembering them. That's what Black Lives Matter was supporting with their post. So let's hope that the FA and Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner and policemen and everybody else get off their knees to that disgusting nihilistic organisation, I would suggest. Number one. Number two is, you know, it's been fascinating listening to all of their information, none of which has been gleaned from the BBC because the BBC refused to call terrorists terrorists. This time round, the BBC's ideological bent is there for all to see, hence why people are tuning out of it in their droves. And there are questions to be asked about, you know, how the so-called best security services in the world managed to miss this attack. And they're legitimate questions, and there are legitimate things to be said about Hamas and what Israel's response will be to this situation, and the stories of the beheadings of babies. I mean, unbelievable, unbelievably awful. And you have people online saying, well, you know, what about what they said with the incubators in Iraq that turned out not to be true? So I try to keep away from things that I know not to be true. But I think we can all agree what is true is an organised attack, a brutal and organised terrorist attack was raised on the people of Israel, and Israel will respond. There were murdered children and raped women, and that was very, very clear for all to see. That doesn't take away from the fact that the response, seeing as Hamas, as we know, keep their command and control centres, ammunition dumps and everything else like that in hospitals, in highly populated civilian areas, and they use their own population as human shields, means that a huge number of innocent Palestinian children will die as a result of Israel's response. I suppose in mitigating circumstances to Israel, they do try and say, we're going to attack here, please get out. And the human shield are not allowed to leave. So there is no moral equivalence between one or the other, but ultimately what's so tragic and sad is that innocent children of both sides are going to die, and that's the worst thing. So this idea that people are going, you've got to pick a side, you've got to pick a side, you've got to pick a side, I think if you pick the side of children, certainly innocent children, then you're getting where you need to go. But I just can't contemplate the rage that Israel must feel, and obviously the rage that the Palestinian people feel. But Hamas killing innocent civilians is deliberately doing so, and filming it and glorifying in it is it's unforgivable. There is no moral equivalence between what they're going to get in return. And then you think about this country, about the UK, and the fact that we've lived in this sort of affluent, leisured way for such a long time now, in peace, which is kind of rare if you think about it in the history of the world, for society to live in peace, certainly in its own homeland, maybe not in its own foreign policy overseas, but has lived in relative peace. And we've lived in affluence and leisure and apathy, I think, and people have become bored. So what happened is we had to create our sense of outrage. In the absence of there being one, we created a sense of outrage, and that sense of outrage is about everything. And we saw it in the, you know, just the unending use of the word fascist against anyone. I've had it myself with this charge of misogyny, whereas misandry is completely okay. We've worked out that you can walk on the streets of the United Kingdom in 2023 and say, kill the Jews. But saying that you don't want to shag someone is absolutely death sentence to that person, which means that society is very unstable. We've used up all the words of outrage, so when a true outrage comes along, those that that deal in those words, that deal in the language of outrage about absolutely everything, have run out of words. There are no words for them to say about what's going on in far-off climes of which none of us are experts. But what we do know is that here at home, we've seen 5,000 and more people take to the streets in support of what's happened, of the Hamas actions, and that's pretty terrifying. If you think we have an uncontrolled immigration into this country, God knows how many people who have come into this country, so apparently fleeing war without their wives and children. I mean, who flees war without their wives and children? How many of those people are sympathetic to this cause? Because we know that we have 5,000 on the streets sitting there and supporting what's gone on. And that means that multiculturalism has failed us completely, because multiculturalism is a completely bonkers and crazy idea. Unless it extends to things like music and food, then it's great. But it's not great if you're going to bring over a culture which is not in any way able to live side by side with the culture that it is coming to. And if Britain is such a dreadful, intolerant place, then why are people coming here in the first place? We need to assimilate under one culture. We need to be a multiracial society that unifies under one culture, because if we don't, it's end days. And we can see how these moral codes that do and don't apply to various people are pulling society apart. And that in itself is dreadful. On a personal note, it's been really interesting this last week that I get stopped a lot in the street because of the stand I take on things, and you know, people usually say the same thing. You speak for the silent majority, and they're really kind and often tearful. You know, a lot of people do, and there is a reason why these people are silent, because they see what happens to those that aren't, and I might be a case in point there after the last couple of weeks. So what's been interesting is this week in particular, the people that have stopped me in the street have very quickly said, I don't support your politics. I do agree with you on free speech, and I don't like cancel culture, but I don't support your politics. I always go, well, what are my politics? I don't believe I actually have much politics. I've got tried to apply a common, reasonable sense to things, but it's not really a political position. And these people have said, whilst I don't support what you say a lot of the time, I do defend your right to say it. And I think what's happening to you is frightening to them. Certainly in regards to the police, someone who lived on my street came up to me and said I was terrified. I thought there'd been, you know, an attack or a murder or something like that in your house, because the police presence was so overwhelming. And I think that was deliberate, to make people feel the fear of the police. While you can glue yourself to a road, breaking the law, stopping ambulances, taking the sick and the dying to hospital, you'll be given a bottle of water. But if you commit the absolute terrible sins that I committed and can't repeat on here owing to my bail conditions, the police have told me what I can and can't speak about, that is dealt with in a totally different way. And in a similar way as when we use the words, if words stop meaning anything, law unapplied, law not applied equally is not law. It's a political weapon. That's all it is. And it's used to silence one side in the debate. It's concerning that we've got two political parties with exactly the same policies as well. So whoever you vote for, and my God, the Conservatives need to hand the baton over. It is just handing the baton over to Communist Party B. It's Communist Party A or Communist Party B, and that's what's happened. No one's really talking about what Keir Starmer's Racial Equality Act is going to be. Now, what do we think that's going to be, the Racial Equality Act, in this very tolerant, warm, welcoming country, where people do really well of all backgrounds, as we can see. And there are people from white working class backgrounds who do badly, and there are people from black working class backgrounds who do really badly. Indian families who do really well, black families who do really well. It's not really about skin colour. It's 2023. We are a multiracial society. So what's Keir Starmer's Racial Equality Act going to be? Well, I've got a feeling what it'll be diversity, equity and inclusion, diversity not being our strength, as our Hamas friends, Hamas supporting London bound friends have shown us, equity and inclusion brought in as a legal part of the legal framework. And if you happen to be born to the wrong intersected group, essentially the oppressor group in communist Britain, you will be discriminated against for your job. It always made me giggle that the Equality Act, so-called Equality Act, had protected characteristics. So some people were more equal than others in the Equality Act. This will probably be another piece of legislation that destroys racial harmony in this country and takes race relations back a huge amount of time. So it feels very unstable. Society feels very, very unstable at the moment. And my heart and my thoughts and all of our thoughts, I think, across the UK go out to the Jewish community who are having their shops attacked here in the UK. Kids being told not to wear their school blazers out of fear. That's not a society which is in a good nick. And our hearts must go out to the Palestinian children and women and men who are going to die as a result of Israel's seemingly entirely justified response to an appalling act of murder and carnage. But to end on some good news, we have been hard at work. Andrew Bridgen, the Reclaim Party MP, has managed to put before Parliament a debate over excess deaths. This will be the first debate in any Parliament across the developed world as to why the bodies are piling up following the greatest failed public health experiment in history. So they've managed to put it on a Friday where all the MPs have gone home, but a minister will be present. It'll be interesting to see how full the public gallery is. I imagine it will be very full, and we have a right to know why these excess deaths are so great, and I'm so proud of us for being the first to get that debate put before Parliament, and I'm proud of Andrew for doing so. So that's good. On a personal level, I'd like to thank everybody for their lovely, lovely and continued messages of support and encouragement and hope, because it is very dark when you're in the eye of a storm, however confected and pathetic it is. Anyway, no, thank you for your lovely, lovely messages of support. And it's a brilliant thing, times like this, in many, many ways, because it teaches you so much about how brave people really are. And it teaches you so much about the people on your side who you thought were brave, who are, as I call them, cosplay freedom fighters. So to all the cosplay freedom fighters, have a lovely day lying to yourself, and to all the rest of you in this brilliant country of ours, keep the faith, keep fighting, common sense will prevail in the end. God bless.